Oh, what a blessing that is. That was fun. And no one can tell that I'm singing off. So what a blessing we come together now and have the massive power of the mute button. I swear, if I was some kind of megalomaniac, I would be getting off on this. I would be really excited. So, welcome to a whole new month. Welcome to a new chapter. Welcome to a new subject. Last month, we were talking about the divine feminine, and this month, our theme is bright beginnings. Now, part of what makes things bright is the ability to be blessing everything, to be absolutely aware of our good and counting our blessings, staying real, not pretending everything is all hunky-dory if it's not, but choosing to live in the light, choosing to be amused by some of the stuff that you got to admit, we're pretty funny. Humans are just funny, especially our ministers. I will tell you that while most of Christianity is celebrating Palm Sunday, the Reverend Dr. David Alexander has renamed this Wash Your Palms Sunday. And so that's part of what we celebrate. It occurs to me that right now is a time where we need to be able to switch gears. We need to be able to turn on a dime. This morning, I wasn't entirely sure we were going to be able to get this to go through. And it did. It just did. Things work out. That's why I did an extra video and said, please pray to make us go through. And it does occur to me that last week we talked about the divine feminine. And it does occur to me that beginnings don't usually start under the sun. They start in the darkness. In the story of Genesis, the creation story that is in the Judeo-Christian tradition, God has to create light. He says, let there be light, or they say. And then there's light. But it starts before the light shows up. When we have a new life in the world, it doesn't start on the day it's born. Now, I don't know exactly when it starts. I'm not going to get into that. But I can tell you that it starts at some point within the darkness of the womb. And every single seed starts naturally underground. It needs to do that because it needs time to come out of its shell into that soft darkness and to put down a taproot. And that taproot, that deep system of roots that grow out of it are actually what allows it to suddenly pop up above ground and be seen by the world. And that's when we think it all starts, but honestly, everything starts long before that. When we do our prayer work, it is in silence. It is within our hearts and our minds and our consciousness. We go into the sacred cave of the heart where we can get in touch with the divine within us. And we might end up doing a lot of prayer work to clear away space for this new way of being in the world. And most people will never see that. Your practitioner might. Your spiritual director might. But really the work is going on inside you, not out where other people, where you could like take a picture of it and put it on Instagram. There's nothing there to see at first. And so I prefer to think of this as when we're celebrating the Feast of Passover. And it's interesting to me because in metaphysical terms, not in real terms, but in metaphysical terms, Egypt, where the Israelites were slaves, metaphysically speaking, is the land of mental darkness. It is the land where we don't see the truth and the glory of our own souls. It is the story of how we separate ourselves and pick ourselves free of the entanglement of false ideas that are represented by the Pharaoh. Now, the way we do it is through the plagues, froggies and all sorts of other wonderful things. It's not necessarily a pleasant breaking free. But then birthing generally, from what I've heard, can get a little messy. birthing of a new person, birthing of a new idea is going to require some blood, sweat, and tears, or, you know, some level of not being comfortable, not being able to be at the brunch you had planned on that day. Or it would be a very interesting brunch, frankly. So what happens is that the divine carries us through that process, even goes so far as separating the Red Sea through Moses in order to get us to the other side. We are carried. All we have to do is walk forward. All we have to do is say yes. And that wonderful power that lives within each and every one of us will get us to the other side. Now, once we get to the other side, once we're free of the mental slavery, something new needs to happen. We need to be in the world in a different way. And that's simply the truth of who we are. You cannot live according to the same old way of being that served you back when you were in a different world. You're on the other side of the Red Sea now. You're on the other side of, perhaps you've made some changes in your life that reflect your new consciousness. I promise you, it will not be comfortable at first. You know, the Israelites found themselves without food or water and in a desert, rather than back where they knew what was expected of them. They knew how to get along, or at least avoid their Egyptian masters. And so what I'm inviting you to think about is that this time, as we have been given a time outside of time in which to deal with a plague, in which to deal with a pandemic, in which to deal with everything's a little bit different. And even if parts of it are good, it's not necessarily comfortable. Now, I absolutely believe that there are parts of this that are wonderful for people. The introverts are having a blast. The introverts are at home where they wanted to be in the first place. We finally have time. Well, some of us finally have time to do all of that reading. I have not made time to make phone calls to people one-on-one, although it's on my list. And I was able to begin that project. That's not something that I would be able to do easily if I was still working from the office. There's too many other things that get in my face. And so I invite you to take this time where all of your routines have been disturbed anyway. I've heard, I believe it was Rahm Emanuel that told President Obama to never let a good crisis go to waste. Right now, we're in that crisis point. It's the time where we are equally balanced between opportunity and danger. And right now, I invite you to be brave enough to use this as an opportunity. So many people are talking to people that they haven't been in touch with for a long time. So many people are stepping up to meet their neighbors finally and to take care of each other. Now, there are some things in the Judeo-Christian tradition that can help us. See, when I read the Bible, any spiritual scripture actually, what I'm doing is looking for, how is this the story of my soul? How is it that Spirit is speaking to me about my life right now in order to help me know how to be in the world? How do I show up better in community or as a Christ consciousness in form? And so I look at Exodus 17, and the Israelites have been carried through all of these experiences by their divine beingness. They've even been provided water. They're complaining about no water in the desert, which I would be right there too, folks. It's dry out there, and it's hot. So Moses takes the staff that he raised up and used while he was in Egypt, and he hits a rock, and water comes gushing out. But after that, is there not a time when you have to stop relying on someone else to do it for you and start doing it yourself? How many times have we prayed for this country to come together? How many times have we prayed for this divisiveness that we've all experienced to start healing? That is what I am seeing. I am seeing individuals stop waiting to be rescued. And yes, there's certainly many opinions about who should be doing what. But what I'm seeing is neighbors helping neighbors. I'm seeing people take responsibility for coming up with a mask, for learning how to use a mask or to make one. There's so many options for that. In the Judeo-Christian tradition, in the book of Exodus, chapter 17, the Israelites are told that they have to fight for themselves. The Amalekites, and I'm sorry, Bob, I know I'm not saying that right, but I'm doing the best I can here. The Amalekites are this group that Joshua, who is the head of the war department for them, needs to protect them from. Now it's time for Moses, think of him as the practitioner in you, to step back and not lead, not hold the waters back with his staff, not create water where there was no water, not call down manna in the desert, and not be the spokesperson that stands between the individual and the divine. There comes a point where we need to learn to pray for ourselves. I am more than happy to pray with people. I love doing it. It is the best legal high I have ever experienced. And I emphasize it's very legal. The practitioners love praying with you. And at some point, if you want to be free of mental slavery, you must learn to practice your own spiritual practice, to figure out what works for you and how to pray for you and the words that work for you. And so that's what this is now. Even Moses, who is told he's not to fight this battle, Moses goes up onto a hill, and as long as his arms are raised, the Israelites are winning. But when he gets tired and his arms come down, they start losing. So there's this part of your consciousness that is powerful and strong, but it might need some help. It might need you to bring in other aspects of who you are, whether that's working with a practitioner in order to uncover those old beliefs. It might mean that you have to love and accept the part of you that is fully capable of throwing a temper tantrum. I practiced that yesterday when I accidentally murderized my printer. $300 later. And so what it says in the book of Exodus is when Moses' arms grew tired, Aaron and Hur brought up a stone for him to sit on while they stood beside him and held up his arms, holding them steady until the sun went down. So what this scripture, I believe, is saying, and I have to give props to Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, S-A-C-K-S, who is a wonderful speaker. He's called a rabbi to rabbis. And he explained this particular teaching in a video. He talks about how at some point we must begin to take care of ourselves. At some point we must fight our own battles, to use a metaphor that to me feels a little unfortunate. But even your leadership, even the strongest part of you, needs the rest of you to come forward and support it. Your practitioners and the ministers across the country are doing the best we can. And there comes a time when each of us need a little help. And so I'm going to invite you to celebrate your inner Moses, to celebrate the part of you that is truly in charge of your own spiritual path, that is truly fully capable of doing the work and has been leading you all along. The divine within you might need a rock to sit on, might need other parts of you to be called in to hold up your arms and to keep the prayer going. See, this is the challenge, is that this metaphor works on so many levels, whether it's the minister or the person who theoretically mediates between humans and God, at least in the old traditions. It also works as you are every single character in the story. But at some level, we need to learn to ask for help, whether it's asking for help via prayer, from a practitioner, from a neighbor, or allowing ourselves to rest on that rock and be carried through. To have somebody else remember who we are, remember the magnificence of our souls for us until we can get back, until the sun goes down and we can stand up and be refreshed again. Whatever aspect of that you're dealing with right now, I invite you to use it. I invite you to take this time to use this and go deeply within to figure out what part of you needs support and what part of you is ready to step up and be the brave one. Now, in the military, there's this thing called Rule 303. Rule 303 says, if you have the means to help, then you have the responsibility. That's a little tougher than what I usually would say from the platform. But if you have the means, if you have the means of doing prayer yourself, if you have the means of helping a neighbor, if you have the means of going to prayer for the entire nation, then you have that responsibility. You have this amazing tool that could be what pulls us up out of this virus. Not just the physical one, but the mental one that has been calling us separate for so long. You have the equivalent of power tools within you. And if you have the means, Rule 303 says, this is yours to do. And so I invite you to be the one who stands up in their truth this week. I invite you to be the person who absolutely knows with every part of them that you have something good to give. Now, it might feel scary. It might feel like the Israelites felt like that somehow God had disappeared and they were on their own. That's not true. It might look like that. It might look like the world is ending. It might look like no one's going to have toilet paper for the next 50 years. That's not true either. What I also see is that we are responsible, not to blame, but responsible for this entire situation. We created this. And it's apparent to me that we created it for a good reason. I don't know exactly what that reason is yet. I am not in any way saying it's okay that some people are dying. I am not in any way saying anyone is to blame. I am saying that the group consciousness of humanity created this somehow. And if we can create it, we can create something else. We can create a world that works for everyone without needing to be in the midst of a catastrophe to come together. We are absolutely at choice right now. In this moment, in this particular crisis, in this particular battle with the Amalekites, we are at choice whether to choose to keep our arms up and stay in prayer or not. Whether to support each other in keeping our arms up and staying in prayer or not. It is entirely up to us. It is the blessing that we carry. It is the good that lives within our own souls that so wants to express itself, that so wants to come out of the old way of thinking of the metaphorical and metaphysical land of Egypt where we were slaves to our false thoughts. What I know is that we all have it in us. And what I absolutely know with every part of me is that this is a time where we all get to stand up and find out for ourselves just how powerful we are. Until this battle, the Israelites didn't know they could stand up for themselves. Afterwards, they were different people. After this is all over, after we've all gone back to the sanctuary with its blessed sound system and its wonderful people, other people pushing buttons that I keep forgetting to push, when we go back, I choose to go back with an expanded consciousness, and I know you will too. Because once your consciousness has been expanded, it can't snap back to the same old way of being. What I know is that when we go back, we will be different people. We will be a different congregation. We will be different in that we have seen another aspect, the magnificence of our own souls. And so that we may absolutely see that we may see with the clarity of the divine, we use one of my favorite tools, which is prayer. And